Great. Now it has been recording. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to program. Today we are going to talk about Turkey-Africa relations from different aspects. Today we have a very special guest. I would like to thank to Dr. Elem Eyrica Tepeciklioğlu and Dr. Frederico Donelli. They accepted our kind invitation and they joined the program. Really, I'm very thankful for attending our program, for your contribution. And of course, today this program will be organized by our department, Political Science and International Relations. It's quite a new department. Just last semester was established, and we are still establishing our department. And also, I would like to thank for the Dean of our faculty, Professor Lokman Gündüz, and Head of our department, İsmail Yaylacı. Really, I would like to thank for the support of many people. Ordem also is a part of our program. Ordem is the Middle East and Africa Research Center of the Fatih Sultan Mehmet Vakıf University. Today also Ordem is a part of our program. Thank you so much. Well, today little bit let me talk about the program. Elem Eyrica Associate Professor Elem Eyrica hocamız is gonna talk about Turkey's Africa policy, the role of hard and soft power. So then Dr. Frederico Donelli, he's gonna talk about how does the West perceive Turkey's involvement in Africa. And after the program, we are going to get the questions and your comments, your constructive comments. I hope we are going to have a good program, fruitful program. I guess that we are going to have friends from different places, African students, and I hope well, we'll have more participants. Let's see. Let me introduce Dr. Elem Eyrica. Dr. Elem Eyrica is a faculty member in the International Law Implementation and Research Center at Yaşar University, Izmir. Her research focuses mostly on African affairs, rising powers in Africa, Turkish foreign policy, and Turkish-African relations. She is the author of the book, Africa in Turkish Foreign Policy, Recent Dynamics, Opportunities and Challenges, published in Turkey 2019. She is also the co-editor of the forthcoming Turkey in Africa, A New Emerging Power, published by Routledge. And that's a huge success, especially your new book, dear Dr. Elem Eyrica. Really, congratulations. It's published by the Routledge, that's international publisher. We hope for the coming months, we would like to listen to you about your new book, about your experience, because that's also indeed making a significant contribution in the academic literature. Well, Dr. Frederico Donelli, he's also from University of Genoa, Italy. He's a postdoc research fellow in international relations at the University of Genoa, Department of Political Science, where he teaches history and politics of the Middle East, and adjunct professor in international politics at Foscari University of Venice. His research fields have covered international politics and security studies of the Middle East region, focusing on the foreign policy of the different players. He has recently published the book Turkey in Africa, Turkey's Strategic Involvement in Sub-Saharan Africa, published by the IB Tourist, which is one of the most famous international book publishing house in the world. And also, I would like to congratulate Federico for his book, because that's really a significant book and filling a significant gap in the academic literature. Also, we would like to listen to you about your experience in the coming months at our university. Right. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to invite for Elem Eyrica hocamız for speaking. She's gonna talk about role of hard and soft power. In fact, that's a very significant aspect of Turkey-African relations. While Turkey has been actively engaged in African politics, not recently, but for a long time, for 20 years, and especially has been developing a different kind of strategic aspects. So really today, I am very interested in listening to Dr. Elem Eyrica about the role and hard power. How Turkey is implementing her soft power and hard power, especially Turkish weapons, has been very attractive in different countries, and the implementation of soft power and hard power of Turkey. Let's listen, and I hope we are gonna get a different insight. Right. Lütfen buyurun hocam.
Thank you, Hocam, for your kind words, and I'm really happy to be a part of this panel together with Dr. Donelli. I have some slides. Let me share my screen with you first. Okay. So are you able to see them?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I got so many slides, I know, but don't worry. Most of them are images. So I thought they would help me to draw attention of especially students. And as you have said, I will try to provide a more general overview of Turkey's Africa policy with a focus on both soft power and hard power instruments. And the latter has drawn attention, especially in the last few years, Turkey's hard power involvement. We have seen it, especially after President Erdogan's last Africa tour. And this is from this tour, actually. He has visited Angola, Togo, and Nigeria. And the visits to Angola and Togo have symbolic importance as being the first visits to those countries at the presidential level. And many cooperation agreements were signed between those countries, in key sectors, especially in energy, defense industry, mining, etc. And there has been a mini summit as well. This is actually from this mini summit, and this one as well from the same summit. The presidents of Liberia and Burkina Faso fled to Togo and met Erdogan, and they have stated that they are committed to enhance their cooperation in different fields, especially in defense cooperation as well. So, why such an interest towards Erdogan's Africa tour, because each time President Erdogan visits an African country, we receive calls from journalists asking why he visited those countries or what was the major motivating factors. But this time, I guess it was different. It was different because it drew a huge amount of interest from both national and international media. And I think it is partly related with Turkey's arms sales or drone diplomacy, as some say. But the visit was also ahead of two important events in Turkey-Africa relations. One was the third Turkey-Africa Business and Economic Forum, which was held, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. And it is estimated that more than 3,000 participants have attended the forum, so it's a huge number. But the most important event will be organized in mid-December this year, when Musa Faki Muhammed visited Turkey in late September and in early October as well. He met Çavuşoğlu. Actually, he first met President Erdogan, and then he had a lunch with Çavuşoğlu, and then they announced that Turkey has been able to set a date for its upcoming summit. Because we were waiting to know if there would be a possible date today. Turkish foreign policy makers were putting lots of efforts to make it this year, because the summit was already delayed in 2019 and it was scheduled to take place in April last year, but it was again cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic that led to the cancellation of many international events and many summits as well, like France Africa Summit or Arab Africa Summit have been also cancelled. And Muhammed also met TİKA's president. He visited TİKA, and he also Turkish official aid agency, Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, and YTB, Presidency for Turks Abroad and Related Communities, and the African Union signed memorandum of understandings with those institutions. So you might ask why Turkey is holding such summits, but you should know that Turkey is not the only country that has been involved in summit diplomacy. Or this image is from Jude Devermont's report, The Art of Summitry, and here you can see that several countries are involved in this art of summitry, as Devermont says it. And France started those summits actually since 1970s, and Turkey is a relatively newcomer in engaging in this summit diplomacy, but you can see that it's not as late as Russia or USA. So those summits, they provide the institutional framework of relations, and they are indicators of the commitment of both parties to enhance relations. And we had two summits before, and in each summit there's a specific topic, there's a theme, and in the first one it was cooperation, the second one had partnership. And now we see that Turkey is more willing to provide the peace and security or stability in the continent, or as well as the economic development. So the theme of the next summit will be peace, security, and development. So you might ask why Turkey is involved in Africa and why she's trying to increase its relations with African countries. It's mostly the economic factors that underline Turkey's Africa strategy, because we always say that Africa provides an important market for Turkish products, or it is an alternative investment site for Turkish companies. But this goes back to the 1980s to Turkey's integration with world markets. It's always the economic factors that come first. So you might say that Turkey's Africa policy is no different from that of other external players, and you would be right. But there are also some other political and strategic factors as well. Turkey aspires to play a larger role in both regional and international politics, and it wants to make new friends, so African countries emerge as reliable partners in this field. And Turkey's problems with neighbors or its traditional allies, or its disappointing relationship with the European Union, also played a large part in accelerating its efforts to approach African countries. There are also some short-term motivating factors, like Turkey's candidacy for non-permanent membership in the UN Security Council. And Turkey and Africa, they also share a common vision for a multipolar world. They all call for reform at international institutions, especially in the United Nations Security Council. You know, African countries now form the majority in most of the international governance institutions, not only in the UN, but also in World Trade Organization, in World Bank, IMF as well.
Excuse me, hocam. Excuse
sure.
me. Please, your slides are not moving. Kindly, please, could you...
Okay,
right.
so you see the major argument in here, right?
No,
No?
just the main page. We can see Turkey.
Okay, that's the pity.
Oh, yeah, okay, great.
Let me try it once again. And you can see this next slide, right?
No, it is still on the first page, right?
Okay, let me try to understand the problem in here. Okay. No? Again, no?
Again, no, yeah.
Oh, I wonder what the problem is.
All right, yeah, that's the... Yeah, now it's moving.
Now it's moving?
Now we can see the picture.
But you can't see them in full screen, right? When I do this, you can't see them.
Yeah, we cannot see it.
All right, just let's see the small ones then.
Yeah, now
Is
we
it
can
working?
see.
Okay,
We
let's
can
try
see.
this one. You will not be able to see the large images, but okay, I had some photos from President Erdogan's recent Africa tour and its mini summit, and as well as from the Economic Forum held 2 weeks ago, and Musa Faki Mohammed's Turkey visit. And then I had shown this regional summit image, but it's not that important anymore. So I was at this very slide and was talking about that Turkey and African countries, they share a common vision. And we were able to see this in the posters available in the streets during Erdogan's Africa tour, because I was just saying that African countries form the majority in most of those international governance institutions, but they have a very little say in the decision-making process of those organizations. So Turkey and Africa, they don't only aspire to have a larger say in this decision-making processes of those organizations, but they also ask for an expansion in both permanent and non-permanent categories of the United Nations Security Council. So we might just skip this one. So I think Turkey has been also using its Ottoman legacy and the lack of a colonial history and slavery in Africa. So I know there might be different interpretations of this Ottoman past, but Turkey tries to present itself as a benign power, having different intentions and using different tools in approaching African countries. And here, in trying to differentiate its policy, African policy, we see that there is a heavy emphasis from its difference from especially Western powers. We don't see much reference to other external players like Russia or China, but Turkish officials also say that they are against the portrayal of Africa as a poor or as a hopeless continent. So together with Turkey's diplomatic expansion and high-level visits, we will talk about them in more detail. But Turkey has also been using several soft power tools and hard power strategies. So let me just quickly talk about them. This image is actually from a few years ago, but Turkey still has the 5th largest diplomatic network in the world. And I checked and saw that the number of Turkish embassies across the world has increased from 39 to 252, with 43 of those embassies are located in African countries. So you see them, right? Okay. And during Erdogan's Africa tour, Anadolu Agency, Turkey's official media agency, they have prepared several infographics, and this was one of them, indicating that Erdogan visited Africa more than any other non-African leader, and he is followed by Emmanuel Macron. So this image is also in Turkish, but I couldn't find the English version. Sorry for that. But it provides a general overview about Turkey's involvement in the continent. It gives numbers about the program coordination offices of TİKA, the number of schools that Turkish Maarif Foundation has opened, and the number of cultural institutions, cultural institutes Yunus Emre Institute has. So here we can see that Turkey has been using several strategies, and trade relations is one of the most important of them. And humanitarian and development assistance, this humanitarian domain is also one of the areas that Turkey is more visible. And of course, they are not the sole agencies that are involved in the implementation of those, like say, diplomacies. There are many of them, like media diplomacy, aviation diplomacy, cultural, education, or religious diplomacy. But when you look at the trade data between Turkey and Africa, you will see that it has steadily increased both with Sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. And there are some slight decreases in some brief periods, first in 2009 and then in 2016. But we can say that there are not sharp ups and downs. Okay, And you will see that Turkey's major exports, both export and import partners, are from North African countries. There are some exceptions, of course, like South Africa or Nigeria in here, but the bulk of Turkey's trade with Africa still concentrates in Northern African countries, but still Turkey's relations with Sub-Saharan Africa is also on the rise in terms of trade relations, of course. So I just thought I should put them in here. If there's a specific question, we can go back to them, but you can see that Turkey has several kinds of and different kinds of trade and economic cooperation agreements with African countries, like agreements on customs matters or free trade agreements. And Turkey's DEIC also has business councils in 45 African countries. But I would like to talk more about the other soft power tools in here. So. Okay, Turkish aid is mostly bilateral, so we mean that Turkey used to provide aid mostly through multilateral organizations until very recently, but now it distributes it in a more bilateral way. And here you can see in the boxes of those food packages that Turkish flags are imprinted on those boxes, so it increases the visibility of Turkey. And another distinguishing aspect of Turkey's aid policy is that Turkish aid comes mostly with no strings attached. Turkey does not tie its aid to certain political conditions. So Turkey is a nodal agency. They, together with TRT World, and they are involved in media diplomacy. They have several offices in different African countries. They have specific sections devoted solely to African news. And so they also had a book about Africa Rising, and it was a very good and interesting publication. And TRT World as well, they have a specific section, and they have, I think, specific programs on African issues. But I think one of the most important developments in this media diplomacy has been that TRT started to broadcast in Swahili last year. So when you look at the activities of Turkish Airlines, I think they have a very good branding strategy, because here you can see in this image, you can easily say the destinations that Turkish Airlines flies in Africa. And each time they start a new destination, they usually advertise it by using very colorful images like this one. And this is also from their start to Conakry. And okay, Turkish Yunus Emre Institute, it is also involved in the cultural diplomacy efforts. Of course, it's not the only institution in this field, but it is, I think, responsible from the implication of this cultural diplomacy, implementation of this cultural diplomacy initiatives. It has cultural centers in different African countries. I think it was 10. And together with, I know that Turkish soap operas are also very popular, especially in Eastern African countries. So they increase interest towards Turkish culture, language, and traditions as well. And Turkish Maarif Foundation, they also have schools, and it was like, I think last time I checked, it was 175, and they were able to transfer schools in most of the African countries. There are still some African countries, of course, like Nigeria or Kenya. And in their website, you can see more detailed info, and they update it in a very regular way. So this one is from early October. Here you can see the list of countries and the number of schools that Maarif Foundation was able to assume control. This one is also in Turkish. I tried to find an English version of the Turkish scholarship program of Presidency for Turks and abroad and related communities. But I think you are able to see that it's a very comprehensive scholarship program, because it does not only cover stipends, but it also covers accommodation, insurance, health insurance, and return tickets as well. And lastly, Turkey's Diyanet Presidency for Religious Affairs and Turkish Diyanet Foundation, they are involved in religious diplomacy efforts together with Turkish NGOs and TİKA as well. So they provide aid. Also, they are also involved in humanitarian aid activities. They organize summits with African countries, and they have a sister city project, which is important to increase people-to-people contact and to accelerate cultural diplomacy efforts. So they are involved in different activities. But I think one of the most visible of those religious diplomacy activities has been the building of mosques and in mega mosques in some African countries, and renovation of other religious buildings together with TİKA. But I know that it is mostly the hard power tools that has drawn attention about Turkey's Africa policy, especially in the last few years. And I also know that it's not very popular in the literature, but Turkey's military cooperation with African countries started in early 1990s, and Turkish military experts provided training to Gambian armed forces, and it's an exceptional relationship actually, because the number of Gambian soldiers that Turkish military experts provided training was approximately 7,000. So it's an important number, and it started upon the request of the Gambian army following the establishment of a Gambian army in mid-1980s. Turkey has also been involved in UN missions deployed in different African countries, and you might know that a Turkish general has assumed the command of UN mission in Somalia in the same period. And Turkey has also been contributing to other UN missions across the continent. So let me just, okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I did something. Sorry. All right. Okay, but its contribution to those UN missions have been smaller following its contribution to UN mission in early 1990s. Turkey has been also involved in anti-piracy operations in Indian Ocean, in Gulf of Aden, Arabian Sea, and Somalian coast. So this is a huge problem, piracy attacks in the region. They also damage commercial activities. So Turkey has been part of different anti-piracy operations in the region, and it has military or defense cooperation agreements with several African countries, and it has been involved in mediation efforts in different African contexts. For example, President Erdogan recently offered that Turkey is willing to mediate in Ethiopian conflict, as well as in Ethiopia's border dispute with Sudan. But it is mostly Turkey's military facility in Somalia and its intervention in Libya that draw much attention. So here you can see more detailed info about Turkey's military facility in Somalia. I know it has been advertised as being Turkey's largest overseas military base, but I think it's not a base at the very classical sense, because I don't think Turkey has higher military ambitions to increase its military deployment in the region. It's more like a military training facility aiming to train Somalian soldiers and strengthen Somalian army, especially against Al-Shabaab terrorist group. And the fourth batch of Somalian soldiers graduated from the academy last year. So these pictures are from the opening ceremony of the facility, and Somalian soldiers also received training in Turkish soil as well in Sparta. So Turkey's involvement in Libya is also a matter of dispute, because this one is from, okay. Turkey, has been supporting UN-backed governments in Libya, but here we can say that economic interests and military strategies, they go hand in hand, because Turkish companies had huge investments during Gaddafi era, and it is estimated that they have lost 19 billion US dollars in terms of their operations. So they would like to compensate those losses, and Turkey is willing to provide stability in the country so that the Turkish companies can go back to Libya and continue their operations. So, but Turkey's involvement is actually more, how to say, complicated, and has been more ambiguous, especially following the recent dynamics in Libya. In the Berlin conference, second Berlin conference in June, it was said that all foreign troops or mercenaries should withdraw from the country. And Turkey says it does not involve Turkish forces, because Turkey is there upon an agreement, a military cooperation agreement that Turkey has signed with Libya, the Libyan Government of National Unity in 2019. So we saw that things have become more ambiguous for Turkish foreign policy in the country. But I think it was last week that Libya Minister of Foreign Affairs Necla Mangush, she visited Turkey. We don't know much detail about the visit, but they said that the parties are determined to increase their cooperation in different sectors, especially in economic areas. But surely I think it also involves in security area as well. During President Erdogan's visit to Sudan in 2017, Turkey and Sudan have signed a cooperation agreement. And actually, they have signed several agreements, but one was about the renovation of the Ottoman era building in Suakin Island. And here you can see why this deal drove much attention and why it alarmed regional powers, especially Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because as you can see, Suakin has a very important strategic location. And the deal also allows Turkey to build a naval dock that could be used both by civilian and military vessels. And it was said that in Egyptian media that Turkey has higher aims to build a military base in the Suakin Island, but both Sudanese and Turkish officials rejected those claims. And as a last issue, I would like to talk about Turkey's arms or drone sales to African countries, because Turkey has been 13th highest arms exporter in the world. So if you're interested in such issues, you would know that SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace and Research Institution, they have detailed reports. They publish it each year, and here you can see Turkey's place. And Turkey's also, as Turkey started to produce its own major arms, Turkey's arms exports also decreased, and Turkey dropped being the 6th largest arms importer in the world to 20th position. So Turkish defense industry is growing and looking for new markets. As Turkish companies are looking for alternative markets, African countries emerged as new clients, important clients for Turkish products, and they are very popular in the international market. A journalist recently told me that an important drone company has contact with 10 different African countries. So it's a very important number, I guess. And they are usually cheaper. I mean, I'm not an expert in this drone technology, but I know that Turkish products are usually at a very compatible price when compared with the other products available in the market, and they have high quality. I mean, it's also argued that China might lower the prices, but they all agree that Turkish products have higher quality and they are easier to operate, because it's from a news that has been published 2 days ago, because it says that it takes roughly 4 months of training to become a certificate operator or technician to drone technician, but it will take much larger time than to be a jet fighter pilot, and it fits the needs of African states because most of the time they use it against non-state actors and terrorist organizations. And I think Turkey's deals with those countries also include know-how sharing and technology transfer. I know that Western powers are very hesitant in this area, and they usually come with no strings attached. Again, as similar to Turkish aid, Turkey does not tie to the purchase of Turkish arms or drones to certain conditions. And more importantly, they enable African countries diversify their partners. So especially in a time when African countries are looking for new partners, apart from France or Russia, Turkey's involvement is likely to change the landscape in this area. But of course, there are some challenges ahead, but I think we might better talk about it in Q&A section before I exceed my time limit and give the floor to Federico.
Well, yeah, thank you. Right, if you would like to use more time, you are welcome. But well, of course, it's better if we kindly stop here. Hocam, thank you very much. Really, it was very constructive and comprehensive analysis of Turkey-Africa relations. You especially focused on the soft power and hard power of Turkey, which methods and which strategies Turkey have been using. Yeah, it is a fact that Africa is a very dynamic continent. For example, Ömer El-Beşir, right, in Sudan, last week there was a different political landscape. There was a military coup, and when Recep Tayyip Erdoğan was in Sudan in 2017, if I am not wrong, it was a different circumstance, different dynamics. Well, actually, the question is that how Turkey can read the changing dynamics in Africa is really very important. Yes, well, you described that Turkey has been actively engaged, actively involved in African politics. Well, in the different regions of the continent, East, West, North, and Southern Sahara, and also even though Turkey has been using new strategies, how effective Turkey is on the ground, because also on the continent, even though Turkey has a historical relationship dates back to 15th century, Turkey is a new actor on the continent. Started in 2000s, yes, more actively started in 2000. So therefore, how effective Turkey has been using her institutions, her strategies. Yes, it is well known that total trade of Turkey has been rising significantly from $5.4 million to $25 million. Also, at the diplomatic level, Turkey has been expanding her influence. But really, I'm very interested in the implementation of the diplomatic influence and hard power. Well, Turkey also, I had a research about Turkey's security policy in Africa, Today, Turkey is changing a new strategy from humanitarian aspect or from soft power to hard power. Turkey is now developing a new vision on the African continent or in the world. Really, those questions really are very critical of understanding the changing dynamics of Turkey-Africa relations, because well, 10 years ago, when Turkey started engaging in African politics, there was the different dynamics in Turkey and even in African politics. But today also, well, after the failed military coup in Turkey, there has been a new dynamics, a new circumstance in both Turkey and in African continent. So therefore, how Turkey has been engaging and what has changed. I think Frederico Donelli also he has different perspective about Turkey-Africa relations. When I choose the topic for Dr. Frederico Donelli, well, because he's actively also involved in the international media, and he's really making a significant contributor to the international media about Turkey-Africa relations. And European powers, European actors, they have a different understanding of Turkey-Africa relations. Yes, well, Turkey is developing a different humanitarian aspect, but how the West has been understanding of Turkey's humanitarian policy, and some media, some research centers, some scholars have seen the recent visit of Turkey of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and from an offensive perspective, an aggressive perspective, saying that Turkey is gonna occupy, is gonna be a new colonial power, and the main reason is the economic ambitions. So we hope Frederico Donelli is going to provide a different perspective about the topic. And again, I would like to appreciate for the participation of Frederico, Dr. Frederico. Yes, right.
Okay.
Please, Frederico, Dr. Frederico.
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And that's a great pleasure because I'm here in the panel with two of the most important scholar about Turkey's Africa. So it's a very great opportunity for me as well. At the same time, I would like to congrats with Elem because in 40 minutes, she did what I'm trying to do in 10 hours during my classes. So congratulations, because you explain everything about Turkey's policy in Africa. So yeah, when the first time when we talk and Professor Sıradağ asked me to talk about the Western perspective about the Turkey's engagement in Africa, I was very skeptical because this is not exactly my research topic. So I decided to share with you some of my experience, because of course, I'm a Western scholar that are trying to understand better the role of, in general, extra-regional actors in Africa. When we are talking about extra-regional actors in Africa, of course, we have to consider all the traditional players. I mean, the former colonial powers like the European countries, like France, Italy as well. But at the same time, we are talking about the United States, because during the Cold War, United States had a huge role in the African issue, in the African politics, and so on. At the same time, we have to talk about Russia, and Russia in some way is an actor in the middle, because Russia had a footprint in Africa during the Cold War. Then after 10 or 15 years without a strong presence in Africa, nowadays is trying to grasp more relevance in Africa. And then we have a huge set of extra-regional countries that are emerging countries. Of course, China is the most important one. When we are talking about new actors in Africa, we are talking about, especially about China. Sometimes we can see some other concern related to other countries like India, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, and recently there is a huge concern related to Turkey. But honestly speaking, when we talk about Turkey and Turkey's role in Africa, I saw a lot of, in some cases, misperceptions, and in other cases, some curiosity. When we talk about the Western perspective, first of all, we have to consider that West in the meaning of Western country like United States or European countries is different. The perspective of the United States in Africa and consequently the role of Turkey in Africa is different than the perspective of European countries of the Turkey's engagement in Africa. Within the European countries as well, when we talk about Turkey's Africa, we have to consider that the perception about the Turkey's engagement in Africa change when we consider different countries. And this is related not only to the background of these countries. Of course, some countries with an important history in relationship with Africa, like France, has a different perception compared with other countries with less important historical relationship. For example, Italy. For Italy, for example, I'm doing the example of my country. For Italy, is important Turkey, not in general. Italy, both from the media perspective, but also from the government perspective, there's no huge concern about Turkey in Africa in general. There is a concern. There is some kind of curiosity to understand what Turkey is doing. But of course, the most important concern is related to the strategic area that, or to better say, the area that are considered strategic by Italy. For example, Libya. So when we talk about Turkey in Africa, we especially talk about the role of Turkey in Libya, in the Libyan crisis, and in the perspective of the transitional government in Libya. If we change country and if we move, for example, to France, and we are talking about the perception of France, of course, France has more interest in Africa than Italy. And France has a huge history of cultural, economic, and of course also colonial relationship with many African countries. Also, Italy have colonial history, of course, but if we compare the number of countries related to the colonial past, Italy had just 4 countries, and if we compare with France, it's completely different. But anyway, the most important thing is that for France, for example, there is a huge concern about Turkey's involvement in the Sahel and in Western Africa. And this is the reason why, for example, the latest trip of President Erdogan in Nigeria, in Angola, created a sort of concern by France. Because for France, these countries, these geographical area of the continent are considered of strategic interest for them, okay? So this is, of course, an important element to be considered when we talk about the Western perspective. So more than Western perspective is the single national interest into Africa, and then the relationship with the engagement of Turkey. When we consider, generally speaking, this policy that Professor Elem showed us, this is a really important policy about Turkey. We have 2 different narratives. We have the narrative that portrays this policy as an overestimation of Turkey's power. So And this is also my concern, my big question when I see all the slides with soft power, with Turkish Airlines, that is, of course, is amazing. If you want to travel to Africa, you have to take Turkish Airlines flight, also because the Ethiopian Airlines nowadays has other problems, by the way. But if we consider how can we translate this soft power into real political influence? Is it possible? Is it natural? Or is just a way to brand, we can say, the role of Turkey in Africa? Because this is the main question. This is also one of my research questions, or the things that I would like to analyze. Can we see a kind of trend into that can be translate this soft power, this presence into real leverage with African countries or not? Sometimes the answer is no, there's no real influence of Turkey in Africa. So in that sense, we can say an overestimation. We cannot overestimate the power of Turkey, the real power of Turkey in Africa. On the other hand, there is another narrative that consider all the discourse behind Turkey's involvement in Africa as something more related to the domestic politics. I mean, something related to the AK party and the idea or the rhetoric to present Turkey as a new emerging middle power able to move in different directions toward different regions and to compete also with other countries, other middle and big powers. So this second narrative that honestly is the one that I found more in Italy, for example. Okay, in Italy, when you talk about Turkey-African relationship, the common discourse is, okay, is another way for President Erdogan to change or to shift the attention from the domestic politics. Okay, so this is nothing real new. This is nothing important for the future of African people, African countries, and for the future of international politics. I think that, and of course, related to this second narrative, there is the idea that Turkey, and especially the government, the AKP government, would like to present the Turkish policy in Africa as something, as we can say, an history of success. This is the title, no? They want to present an history of success. So Somalia could be the apex of this history of success. So what I would like to share with you, and what I think is useful if we want to open a real debate about the role of Turkey in Africa, is to find a middle way between these two narratives. I mean, we cannot underestimate the role of Turkey, because all the things that we have seen before from the slides, from the beautiful slide, from trade agreement, military cooperation, Turkish airline flights, education sector, humanitarian sector, all these things together show us that Turkey is, of course, a new phenomenon in Africa, a new actor in Africa, but it is. We cannot deny that it is. We cannot neglect the reality. And this is, I think, the first point. We have to understand that Turkey is a new actor in Africa. There are no doubt about it. But then we have to consider what can Turkey do, or does, sorry, in Africa. At the same time, what can Turkey does in relation with other countries in Africa? I mean, Turkey, there is a competition among Turkey and other countries, or there could be also space for cooperation. Cooperation with African countries, but also with other extra-regional actors in different sectors, from the development aid assistance, humanitarian sector, to the security sector. I think that Turkey, most of the time when we talk about Turkey in Africa with colleagues, with Western colleagues, and also in public speeches, the majority of the people and the scholar consider Turkey mainly as a competitor of European countries. And in some way, this is true. For example, if we consider the economic sector and we compare Turkey with Italy, Turkey and Italy have both common interests in economic sector, but at the same time, they could be a competitor in some other sectors. For example, manufacturing or infrastructure, energy sector. The most important company that operates in Africa, Italian company, is Eni. Eni is the leading energy company for Italy. And of course, Eni is a competitor for some other energy sectors company, Turkish companies. But my point is that if we understand also the potential role of Turkey, for example, in the security sectors, of course, many observers, many journalists, and many scholars nowadays are looking toward the so-called drone diplomacy and the idea to spread UAV, Turkish-made UAV in Africa, consider this a kind of threat for the stability of the continent. So Turkey is considered mainly not as security provider or stability provider, but as instability provider. Okay, so an actor that generates instability on the continent. But why we consider Turkey in this manner? Why we do not see how Turkey in the security sector also involved in some training of special forces, I mean army special forces, but also policy special forces. And this is one of the most important elements when we talk about state building, for example. When we talk about state building, we have to consider that the improvement of national security forces is one of the key factors in order to stabilize a country. And Turkey in this sector has proved to be effective, has proved to be one of the players that could help to stabilize some countries. So my point is that we can see Turkey in both sense. We can see as a competitor if we analyze in some sector, but at the same time, we can consider as a partner from the Western perspective. And I think, and this is probably an opinion that maybe some of you do not agree, so I'm open to debate about it, but I'm pretty sure that from Washington perspective, and that is important if we consider the upcoming years, from the Washington perspective, Turkey in the upcoming years could be an actor, a player, or a partner in some way able to counter the huge influence of China on the continent. And I believe that United States in the future, in the upcoming future, could see the Turkey's involvement in Africa as an asset more than a threat. That's, of course, probably just an opinion, but I did many interviews also with American officials, and I received this feeling. So I believe that in some way, the Turkish policy in Africa could be one of the elements that could strengthen relation with the former Western partners. We know that nowadays there are many frictions, many also misunderstandings among European countries or Western countries and Turkey, but the role that Turkey could play in Africa as in other scenario, and not only to counter the influence of Russia, but especially to counter the influence of China, I believe that could be a future important future or aspect in the relationship between the West and Turkey. So now if you have question, of course, I just want to give some points in order to move the debate, we can say, and yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Frederico, thank you very much. Really, it was very constructive analysis and very fruitful insight from your perspective. Yes, before we open the question and answer sections, I would like to also highlight that Dr. Frederico, yes, well, I agree with your points, especially local domestic dynamics in Turkey is very important, very significant factor behind Turkey-Africa relations. On the other hand, of course, not only domestic dynamics, but also regional dynamics and EU-Turkey relations, for example, also is very important behind growing Turkey-Africa relations. As you remember that, especially the analysis point out that especially Turkey decided to get more actively engaged in Africa because of the failure of Turkey's relations with the European Union, has not been accepted by the European Union and got disappointing. So therefore, opening the new geopolitical strategies and new trading relations and looking for the new friends, not only getting dependent on the European Union, but also strategic diversification of Turkish foreign and security policy. These factors also have been very critical for driving Turkey-Africa relations. Yes, well, also your point is that competitional cooperation, well, it's a fact that Turkey has her own unique stance in African politics. For example, in Somalia, Somalia is indeed, okay, very great example for understanding the humanitarian aspect of Turkey on the continent. Well, until 2011, well, no actors from European countries was visited in Somalia because of the security concern. But well, diplomats, of course, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the time, Prime Minister, and with a large delegation from different sectors, not only business, but also, well, art, as you know that. It was also a very critical visit to start a new aspect of Turkey's diplomacy in Africa. What I would like to say that, well, yes, there are different space of cooperation between Turkey and the European Union. Turkey also is a candidate country for the EU. So therefore, what can be done between the two actors, EU and Turkey, because, well, is there any space for cooperation? Well, that is also, it has to be also analyzed, because as you know that Turkey has been developing, well, Europe has a different security perspective, especially depending on the United States and very deep relations with the NATO. So therefore, but competition and cooperation, well, in the coming years, how Turkey can change or can drive her foreign policy in African policy really needs to be analyzed from different perspectives. Also, right, you mentioned that there are different narratives, and especially your question is very valuable. How can translate soft power to the real politics? That's indeed really, it has to be focused very deeply. Yes, Dr. Elem Eyrica, he also mentioned that Turkey has different instruments, different methods, Turkish Airlines and cultural centers, TİKA, and drone diplomacy. But the question is that how this policy strategy of Turkey is meeting with the reality on the ground. That's indeed okay, very strategic question. Also, my also observation is that yes, leadership is playing a very important role in developing relations with Africa, between Turkey and Africa, especially President Recep Erdogan's interest exactly okay shouldn't be neglected. Today the African Forum, Turkey-Africa relations has been developing as a part of the only Justice and Development Party, or today Turkey's strategy with Africa has become a strategy of the state. That's also very important. And so in my opinion, yes, over the 20 years, Turkey has been gaining a strategic foothold and really establishing its influence on the ground at the different levels. But consistency is very important. I mean that consistency, because after 2000, the relations have been growing. But before that, the relations have been neglected with African continent. So therefore, especially how the Turkey-Africa relations will be based on the principle of consistency is indeed okay, very critical question for the interested people. Okay, right now I would like to open another section. Now we can get the questions for the scholars. Right, you don't have to write your questions in the chat, but if you raise your voice, you are welcome. It's up to you, because maybe some participants can be feel better if he or she can write the questions in the chat. Right, it's up to you. Now you are welcome to getting your questions.
Hocam, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Let me open my camera as well. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have been following Dr. Donelli and Dr. Tepeciklioğlu's works for a while, especially because of their relevance for my PhD. So my question, I'll keep it very short. Two domestic questions, so probably it would be more relevant to Dr. Tepeciklioğlu. Two things I have in my mind. First of all, how do you think the current growing economic problems in Turkey would have an impact on Turkey's African opening or African policy? And secondly, do you think that historically, the increasing Islamization, especially after the 1980s, and the rise of political Islam, so to say, had an impact on Turkey's African policy? Thank you.
So sorry, I think I couldn't get the last one. Do you mean the role of the use of religion in Turkey's Africa policy. So,
I mean, what I have more in my mind is the rise of trade institutions such as Müsiat or you know the so-called Anatolian tigers. Some call it the pious capitalists or Islamic bourgeoisie or Islamic entrepreneurs, enterprises. How do you think this, in terms of the interaction between domestic and foreign policy context, do you think this was in some way important aspect?
thank you. I think both questions are related with the economic issues. And yes, I received this question a lot. Thank you. If the current growing economic problems would have any significant impacts on Turkey's Africa strategy. So they might have, of course. I think it might slow down Turkey's humanitarian engagement in the region to a certain extent. But as you have also said, there's an important interplay between domestic factors and the economic interest, because we usually talk about how Africa matters for Turkish companies in terms of its market potential and in terms of being an important investment site. But we usually neglect this political economy dimension because we usually forget to say that this is not a phenomenon related to late 1990s or the GDP period, because we know that it was mostly the AK Party government that accelerated Turkey's policy in Africa and its efforts to increase its influence. But this goes back to the 1980s when to the liberalization wave of 1980s, when Turkish economy started to integrate with world markets, when we witnessed the emergence of a new bourgeoisie, as you said. Someone called it as Anatolian tigers, some say conservative bourgeoisie, some say dual bourgeoisie. But what we need to consider, I think, is that it's quite natural, because Western markets were already penetrated by a more, let's say, secular Tusiat. And of course, when we have witnessed the emergence of a new bourgeoisie that has its roots in Anatolian heartland, of course, they would look for alternative markets. So Africa and Middle Eastern countries, they had provided an important opportunity for those Turkish companies. And I don't expect any slowing down in this area in the economic field, because Africa's image is also changing. Once Africa was seen by Turkish companies as a distant region with full of uncertainties or political risks, but now they mostly portray Africa as a continent with full of opportunities for Turkish companies. So especially there are huge Turkish construction companies and there are Turkish energy companies as well. They are trying to increase their involvement. And it wasn't the same like 5 or 6 years ago when Turkish energy companies started to enter African markets. So of course, the use of religion in Turkish foreign policy has also increased, especially in the last years. And this appeals to some African countries, especially to those Muslim majority African countries or countries having significant Muslim populations. And but I think we should not take it for granted that Turkey's religious or cultural ties or its Ottoman past bring for the expected outcomes. Let's say it doesn't necessarily mean that Turkey's efforts are welcome in different fields. And I think I would like to second Dr. Donelli's thoughts that we can both overestimate and underestimate Turkey's role in Africa, he said, but we should neither overestimate and underestimate. So it was good to hear how Western countries see Turkey's involvement, but I think what is equally important is to know more about the perspective, African perspectives towards Turkey's involvement. So I think we would have more idea how Turkey's policies, both in the economic area or in the religious field as well, how it appeals or if it finds resonance in African countries. So I don't expect, of course, any radical change in Turkey's Africa policy, even if the economic conditions will go worse, because there are huge interests at stake about Turkish companies, especially. So I think that will be all.
Right. And dear Ardahan, right?
May I say something?
And of course, Elisa, well, he's also, but please kindly go ahead.
Yeah,
Dr.
I just
Donelli.
want to add something to the Elem
Please.
answer. In some way, I disagree with her, but that's normal, I guess, among scholars. But I think that the current situation, economic situation, could affect the policy, the Turkish policy in Africa. I mean, I honestly, I am a huge fan of the Copenhagen School, but at the same time, I believe in realism. So I think that the capabilities in terms of research capabilities is something that in the international politics counts a lot. So if nowadays the Turkish economy or Turkish researches are not enough to sustain an ambitious policy in Africa, this is something that we have to consider in the upcoming months or years. And I also see another limit or constraint related also to what Elem mentioned before, and I believe is more related to the public awareness about Africa. I mean, the Turkish public awareness about Africa. Of course, there is a growing interest among scholars, among think tanks, also among journalists, Turkish journalists, but this is more related to the broadcasting, English-speaking broadcasting. I mean, if we're watching TRT World or Anadolu Agency English version, we can find a lot of articles, and that's important, definitely. That's really important to create awareness among Turkish people. But at the same time, if we walk around, I'm here in Istanbul, and if I walk around and I try to talk with the common people in the street about the Turkish policy in Africa, I believe that only 2 in 10 can answer me something about it. So I think that if we look in the mid-long term, so not the next 2 years, but the next decade, the public awareness of Turkish people, of common Turkish people, is an important thing to consider. Because you cannot sustain an ambitious policy if you don't have behind also an awareness by the public. That's my point. I know that maybe, yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Thank you, dear Federico. Really, I have also a comment, but Elisa, she's waiting for her comment. Please go ahead, dear Elisa.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you to both of you for enlightening.
By the way, if you don't mind, kindly, well, I was supposed to say it before. Kindly, well, could you introduce yourself,
Sure,
your institutions, and thank you.
Of course. I'm Elisa Dominguez dos Santos. I'm sorry, I have 2 screens here. It's a bit.
No, that's not clear.
I'm working for IFRI, which is the French Institute for International Relations. It's a French think tank based in Paris. And actually, I'm working on both research center. The first one is Sub-Saharan Africa Center, and the other one is Turkey and Middle East program. So those questions raise my attention a lot. So thank you very much for those enlightening presentations. I do share the first interrogation about the sustainability of this apparently expansionism of Turkey in Africa regarding the economic situation in the country. But I do believe also there are many rooms for collaboration, as Dr. Donelli raised. Obviously between external regional actors and Turkey, but I believe regarding European, like Western regional actors, I believe it needs a consensus, especially within the EU institution, because I think that, as an instance, the Eastern Med crisis, like the so-called crisis between 2020, has shown how the EU how the EU has a lack of consensus regarding how to deal with Turkey, especially between the French response and the Germany politics toward Turkey. And in that sense, I think that the so-called building of European strategic autonomy, which is pushed by France, and the new European Takuba force in the Sahel, there's a paradox here and some difficulties, I think. And it's a tricky question, I believe, but how do you actually perceive the possibility to actually cooperate with Turkey, for instance, in the Sahel, in the security sector, regarding all those, like the lack of consensus within the actor on how to deal actually with Turkey and also within the NATO? Thank you.
Right, okay. Your question is going to Dr. Federico or Dr. Federico, right? Okay.
Or both, if Elem
Right.
Eyrica has some inputs.
Right. If you don't mind, dear Dr. Federico, may I make
yeah, if you prefer to collect,
thank you.
yeah.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
you. And before I get your questions, dear Elisa, well, the question is how the current economic situations affect Turkey's role in Africa. Well, as I see that, dear Federico, you are pessimistic about Turkey's role in Africa. You mean that well, it's going to affect negatively Turkey. Well, the current economic situations, pandemic, etc., will limit Turkey's involvement, increasing involvement, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay, right, okay. But what I believe that I have a different perspective. When at the global level, regional level, when there's crisis in the region, what I observed that Turkey wants to be more active, not aggressive, more active in developing relations with the different regions, because of the fact that Turkey wants to sell its trading products and increase its economic relations. So I believe that Turkey can take advantage of the current economic situations in the country, but also we know that the pandemic not only affect Turkey but also all over the world. So, but Turkey could have different perspective. So can be more active, because we saw that when the Arab Spring or the security crisis or political crisis began in North Africa and in the Middle East, Turkey lost its friends in some places, in Syria, in Iraq, and in North Africa. So then, total trade between Turkey and Africa has begun to increase, and diplomatically, Turkey also has become a more active player on the continent. So, I am very optimistic, not pessimistic, that is gonna open the new strategic opportunities for Turkey, because also what we have seen that the President Erdogan made a visit in 3 countries, Angola, Togo, and Nigeria, and also economic forum has been was held, but also in December the 3rd Turkey-Africa summit is gonna take place. So there are very significant proof that the pandemic or economic situations is not gonna limit Turkey. And the question about security, Turkey security, how the cooperation, at the Sahel, the West has a different approach. But Turkey has also a different approach to security in Africa. For example, in Somali, what Dr. Elem highlighted that has a military establishment or trading establishment. But this military training center in Somali is different than the Western actors have across the African continent. Well, for example, the Western military missions, how they train, for example, African soldiers, how they train African, police, and they have also very specified goals in the African continent. For example, protect the economic interest and political interest. So therefore, Turkey and the Western actors' security policy have been differing, very different. So, but cooperation, yes. Is cooperation possible? Yes, in the fields of trading and, in the different perspective, it has to be analyzed. Yes, thank you. Dear Federico, please, you are welcome.
Yeah, I just want to add something to what you said related to the security sector, and then I can answer to Elisa's question. I think, but the two things are related, by the way. I think that what is the biggest problem between the Western countries, European countries, and Turkey is the complete lack of coordination. You did the example of Somalia. Just check Somalia. In Somalia, we have Turkey that is training the Aramad forces. Then they also train the Gorgor forces that are another special forces. Still Somalia, but in Djibouti, Italy has a military base, and in Djibouti, the Carabinieri that are our special forces, we can say Army Special Forces, are training another Somali special forces that are Darwish. And when we see on the ground these different Somali special forces, they are not coordinated. They are not coordinated. I don't know if you are following the African events, and of course all the attention are related to Sudan and Ethiopia. But during the last 2 weeks, we have seen a rebel in the Galmudug state in Somalia, and one of the problems of the Somali National Army was related by the lack of coordination among these special forces. So again, I believe that there is a space or room of opportunity to cooperation. Definitely, I strongly believe, and I think that Turkey in Africa is an opportunity for European countries. At the same time, for Turkey, European countries could be an opportunity in Africa as well. Because, okay, you're right when you say that Africa is the market of the future, so you are optimistic, and I want to be optimistic as you for the future of Turkish economy. But in order to be optimistic, Turkish economy need investment, and need investment also from abroad, from European countries. So what I would like to share with you, and maybe you do not agree, and I would like also to answer to Elisa's question, is that I think that European countries should understand that nowadays in Africa, we have a pluralist model of development, of institutionalization of the countries. We cannot consider only the so-called Washington consensus or European model of development. And Turkey, from that perspective, could add something very important from its own experience. So I think that if European countries and Turkey could put together and share a vision for some specific region of Africa, I don't want to say for the whole continent, some specific region as a Sahel, they can do a lot. That's my point. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think that this is a good point. Of course, there are some, we can say, divergences, especially related to the conditionality, to the institutional background or democratic background, and so on. but I think there is space for cooperation, more cooperation. Okay, I'm sorry if I can take too long.
That's really very valuable comment. Thank you, dear Federico, Dr. Federico. Right.
Can I add something in
Yes,
here?
please.
Well,
Yes.
I'd like to add that I'm not that optimistic at all because what I was trying to say is just, yes, the growing economic problems, as I said, might slow down Turkey's humanitarian engagement. And we've seen that when Turkey paid the due payments of Somalia's due payments to IMF, it drove criticism from the opposition. So we might see similar trends in the near future. But what I was trying to say that I don't think there will be an important change in the short term. And I think it's too soon to make bold speculations about the long term. But we know that Turkish companies, most of those companies have government support, and especially those drone companies or energy companies as well. So, but they will continue their operations with or without the government support, because the economic interests are very high in those African countries, especially in Libya or in Somalia. And I think we should not be thinking that Turkey's policies in different African countries, let's take Somalia, for example, is built on a purely humanitarian agenda. Of course, there's always this humanitarian actions and economic interests, they go hand in hand. And Turkey's involvement in Somalia started in the humanitarian domain and then it expanded into other areas like military cooperation, etc. So I think we might see a similar pattern in Sahel as well. And I agree with Dr. Donelli and Elisa, there is more room for cooperation, I guess, because Turkey has lots to offer in terms of military training as a country, unfortunately struggling with terrorist attacks and with several terrorist organizations for decades. Turkey can provide its expertise in the countries in Sahel as well. So when I was saying that Turkey does not have a higher military ambition in Africa, I say it also because Turkey lacks the financial capabilities to do so. Even it wants to follow a military policy, military-oriented policy, because it's already engaged in Syrian crisis, Libyan crisis, etc. It does not have the power to get involved in too many fronts at the same time. But in Sahel, I think Turkey's involvement might be welcome than that of Russia's, for example, because when we talk about Russia, we should also talk about the activities of the Wagner Group, and we don't know much info about their activities, so they are trying to increase their involvement, and they have been already doing so in Mali, for example. And for the EU, I think Turkey's involvement might be more preferable than the involvement of Russia or any other external actor like China as well. So Turkey has lots to offer in terms of military cooperation. And I've been receiving this question quite a lot about Turkey's Sahel policy. I don't think it has a systematic Sahel policy at the time being, but we see that Turkey's involvement started to increase in these areas, but we might see a similar pattern as we have seen in Somalia, because Turkey's activities in the Sahel is now limited to the use of soft power instruments to the delivery of humanitarian aid, which is actually very limited at the time being. Turkey is really nearly absent in terms of military cooperation, so we might expect an increase in the security cooperation or defense industry cooperation as well.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your insights, Dr. Elem. I think we might get another questions. Yes, any questions? Right. Any questions? If there is no questions, I might. Yes, Elem, would you like to? All right. Okay. On the previous comment, cooperation. Well, if EU aims to cooperate with Turkey. I believe that because of the strategic reasons. First, to limit or to constrain the growing power of Russia or Wagner security forces, because they are different. And the second point is that also, to limit the growing power of China on the continent. I believe so. Yes, Turkey is a candidate, is a candidate member of the European Union, and is one of the most strategic partner in terms of trade, in terms of education. Today, most of the European, most of Turkish universities are part of, for example, Erasmus programs. I mean that, in the trading area, yes, it can be possible. It can be possible to cooperate in the different fields, but how to eliminate the differences of Turkey's Africa policy? This is, I believe, that important. Well, yes. Any comment? Any questions? Right, dear Elisa. Well, are you happy? For the answers, for the comment, or what is your perspective? How what EU is supposed to do to do more cooperation with Turkey in Africa, in Sahel or in Sub-Saharan Africa? What's your idea?
Actually, I think that the Sahel could be the perfect opportunity to actually collaborate and have a renewal response, a collaborative response, and a positive agenda with Turkey, actually. But the fact is that I've been working a lot on the Eastern Med area lately, and I must say that I'm a bit pessimistic so far, because I think that we can see, as I said, the lack of consensus within the EU, and without any strategical framework within the EU, actual collaboration is difficult with Turkey. But actually, Sahel could be an opportunity with the new European force, Takuba, which so far is not a lot, it's not really something, but I believe it's gonna grow. And the fact that Turkey is moving to the Sahel, as Elem said, with Mali, they signed an agreement with Niger already. So there is a lot of room. And the fact that, of course, and I think that's also how Turkey justify that it's still engaged in Libya, is that because they're with Russia, we are staying in Libya. And the fact is that with Mali and in Mali, I think they can do the same. Let's say, okay, Wagner is coming, we are coming. In Sudan, I'm sure they're already doing it. Like Wagner is in Sudan since 2019, I think, and Turkey is try to increase its engagement in the country. I don't have any insight about what they're doing with the coup. So if you have any insight about that, please, please. But yeah, I think that's all so far. It's like without any consensus, without France and Germany talking to have a positive agenda, yes, towards Turkey, I think it's a bit difficult to have actually cooperation. Your views.
Yeah, thank you. especially French media is very interested in Turkey's involvement in Africa, and but there is a negative perspective mostly on the French media, and on German or on Italian media. I have no idea, but French especially, why they are producing negative perception about Turkey's involvement in Africa. I mean, we believe that yes, competition on Africa among the powers, among the rising powers. Yes, also it's well known that Africa is strategically important for France, but also can we say that the active involvement of France has been diminishing, has been reducing over the years? Elisa, what would you like to say?
I'm not a journalist, I'm not working for media, so I don't want to bring the voice of all the media scene in Paris or in France, but I think there is a bias with it's for sure the so-called crisis of 2020 and how French responded, like the firm position of Emmanuel Macron and the fact that he was kind of the only one doing so has definitely put within the media scene that kind of perspective toward the expansionism of Turkey and how it's a challenger, how it's a competitor for the EU and for France especially. But I think that now it's moving into the Sahel effectively, that there are many concerns and there are many concerns of seeing Turkey growing influence in the Sahel, and the fact is that the French image in the Sahel is kind of bad. There are so-called anti-Francais sentiments like growing in the Sahel, and I think France sees Turkey as a real competitor so far, and I don't see any collaborative perspective of collaboration. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. If there is
I think there's another question.
Yes, please.
From Dr. Turhan. I think he's going to ask a question. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead, dear Dr. Yunus.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you so much for this very valuable and very, I would say, quality conference. But I was able to join most of the part of the conference because I was at the course. So I'm sorry for this. I could miss most part of the activities. But my question will be to Frederico Donelli. As we know that Turkey's Africa, one of the dimensions of Turkey-Africa relation is the discourse, particularly from the political elites, use the anti-colonial discourse when it is establishing its relation with the Africa. So this anti-colonial discourse could be the main, let's say, obstacle that prevent a cooperative relation between Turkey and the EU in terms of Africa. Did you get my point?
Okay. May I answer immediately?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, this is one of the obstacles, definitely. This is one of them. But I don't think that is so important. I mean, we know, when I say we, of course, I relate it to the Western countries and European countries. We know that especially President Erdogan has a double rhetoric, and sometimes the discourse is more related to affect the domestic policy than the international politics, so to present itself as a real leader and a strong leader within the country. Related to Africa, I believe that is not against the Western countries at all. I think it's important to strengthen the position of Turkey in relation with the African countries, and in relation with one of the biggest aim of Turkey, I think is a really ambitious one, that is to prove in some way a reform, to attempt a reform of the global governance. I think that one of the key points, and probably I believe it will be one of the main traits of the upcoming summit in December, will be the idea to promote something of within the international governance, within the international organization. And Turkey want to present itself as the leader of many countries, many African countries, and generally speaking of, this is a very interesting point, of global South countries. So in some way, I always, when I talk about this narrative in Africa, but in general, also in Latin America, I talk about a kind of a third worldism by President Erdogan. And this third worldism is what is commonly referred to the famous motto, the world is bigger than five. If you check on the discourse, on the speeches of Turkish officials in African countries and so on, they always refer to these, we can say, to this motto, to this rhetoric, you know. I think that the anti-colonial discourse is linked, is strongly linked with these aims, with these objectives. So yeah, to answer to your question, this is an obstacle, but at the same time, I don't think that, you know, European countries know that they have a bad past, they have a bad colonial past. Okay, we are trying since decades to, in some way, to create a process of, again, of awareness among European population to the bad things that happened during the last century. I don't want to say that there are, that of course there are many movements, also in Italy, unfortunately, many movements that still have a strong xenophobic and racist approach and so on. But at the same time, at the government level, I don't think that is so important in the relationship with Turkey. I think it's more important some other aspects, more concrete aspects.
Thank you. Can I have question to
Yes.
Dr. Elem Eyrica?
Exactly. By the way, welcome, dear
Thank you.
Yunus, Dr. Yunus. Really, it was nice. It's nice to see you. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. My question is about, let's say, okay, Turkey is really engaging to Africa quite deeply for, let's say, over the 2 decades.
Mhm.
As we know that some countries which have deeply involved to Africa become a dependent on Africa over a time, such as France. Because today France is quite deeply dependent on African resources, I mean underground resources. And let's look at the China today. China is quite need to African material for their internal and sustainability, economic development, so on and so forth. So when Turkey involved Africa quite deeply in the future, do you see any, let's say, counter effect, or that Turkey will depend on Africa in terms of having too much African refugees or students or uneducated Africans? My question is how Turkey will manage that Turkey would be main destination for the African when Turkey involved that much deeply. Did you get my question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, it was an interesting question and surely a different one. Thanks again. And we have been engaged in an internship program at Foreign Policy Institute, and we try to discuss African policies of different external powers. We started with Turkey and continued with Russia, USA. Today we discussed India and China, and next week Brazil and Japan will be the focus countries. So as we started this training program, I realized that I kind of repeated myself, because I was always saying why Africa matters for those countries. I was always saying, oh, it's mostly the economic factors. Africa is an important market, etc. And I was like, okay, you should realize that the African policies of those external powers are not that different at all. So Turkey is no different in this sense. It's mostly the economic factors, but it is also often a mixture of those economic, political, and strategic considerations. And as Turkey, I know that there is a heavy emphasis on the use of those numbers, like the number of Turkish embassies, Turkey's trade volume with Africa, the number of program coordination offices of TİKA or the flights of Turkish Airlines. I do it as well as I did it today. I benefit from the use of the strength of those numbers, but I think we should also realize that it's not that big. Turkey's involvement is not that intense in all areas, because yes, there has been a significant increase in Turkey's trade volume with African countries. Like we talk about a 6-fold increase in the last 2 decades, but it's still not that high. It's still I think slightly above $20 billion. So it is still much smaller than that of China's, India's, or US or European Union's trade with Africa, etc. So in order to be highly dependent on Africa, I think we still have more time because Turkish companies, for Turkish companies, Africa provides important opportunities, of course, because we haven't seen the involvement of those Turkish defense companies, until very recently. Now there is a huge overlap of interest between the government and those companies as well. So, but I think Turkey is still not that dependent on Africa, because our major trade partners are still European Union countries, and we are still so much dependent on Russia or the Middle East to meet our energy demands, are increasing the rising energy demands as a country being highly dependent on external sources. Turkey is also trying to diversify its source countries, but still African countries are not important partners for Turkey, except for Nigeria, perhaps. And in terms of other areas, I think there's still some time, but I think that would be all. I hope it was helpful. Let me check if I have something else to add.
I just wondering, is Turkey ready to face such amount of immigrant coming from Africa? Because as we know that most of African nations now seeing Europe is the main destination point. However, when Turkey engaged too much to Africa, somehow they will enrich their destinations, and Turkey might be a new getaway for their rota. So is Turkey ready this kind of counter effect of African engagement? Do you get my point?
So I'm not sure if we can manage more refugee crisis, but I think the interest towards Turkey's involvement in Sahel is also related with this very issue, because I have received this question quite a lot. Is Turkey willing to enhance its involvement in Sahel region because there's humanitarian involvement? Turkey has been building mosques and other religious buildings in those Western African countries, and again the deal with Niger has been important, defense cooperation agreement, although sometimes the problem about those agreements that sometimes they remain on the paper, but I think there's also this issue that Turkey can be a buffer zone for those migrants, so that they will not easily make their way to Europe. But I'm not sure if Turkish economy could cope with the involvement of more migrants, as we are already dealing problems about integrating those, unfortunately integrating those people to Turkish economy or to Turkish social life. And you know, there are also the public opinion about especially Syrian refugees is not that positive at all the time. So I'm not that optimistic at all about this issue.
But I contribute something. I think one of the most interesting gaps in the Turkish policymakers is to analyzing the counter effect of African engagement, because we just focus on Africa, but how about the immigration, unemployment, let's say terrorism, or the sickness that is pandemic in Africa would inevitably influence Turkey within Turkey's territory. So we should really develop the policy looking from this perspective rather than just going to Nigeria, Somalia. And I think as we are a scholar, or we should really raise this issue in our around to move the politicians to take action on this kind of perspective. Thank you.
Right, dear Yunus, yes, that's really very valuable comment. Really, thank you so much. I also agree with you that, well, not a general analysis and not general perspectives. I think scholars, academicians, politicians supposed to focus on the specific aspects of Turkey-Africa relations. For example, as you said, well, terrorism, migration, and well, specific cases of the countries on the continent. Right. Okay. I think time is up. Dear scholars, Dr. Frederico and Dr. Elem Eyrica, on behalf of the university and my departments and Ordan, I would like to thank you. I would like to appreciate for your great contribution. Really, you spent your valuable time, and of course, participants, well, they joined the program and made contribution. Thank you so much. Really, well, from my perspective, it is indeed a very fruitful program, and gave me different aspects and opened my academic horizons. Hope to see you again, and really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Right.
Thank you.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.